Welcome and welcome back, everybody, to the OK Grognard Show. It is Thursday, March 4th, 2021, 10 a.m. Central, in beautiful Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. Had a little difficulty with the audio and some of my images. I did an update on my computer yesterday and it completely switched my D and E drives. I've never seen that before, updating a computer, but there you go. It is GM's Day, the day we marched forth for. And today I just thought I'd give some GMing tips for GM's Day as we honor the day. It's also well, we'll get there in just a second. Happy GM's Day, everybody. If you're not a GM, do the right thing. Thank your GM. Even if you haven't been playing over this last 10-month period, almost a year. We're cruising up on a year, aren't we? I know Lake Geneva Games closed down, I want to say March 23rd of last year. It's going to reopen April 15th, so it will have been closed for over a year. Add another 3 weeks on top of that. Thank goodness it's reopening. I think a lot of people have been going stir crazy and wanting it to reopen too. So, let's slide me over just a little bit. The exciting news there is, of course, tempered by the fact that we have to wait for up-to-date guidelines in April just before we open. As to potential capacity, I have no doubt we'll still be wearing masks, and that's just fine. Everyone should be wearing them. They're not just for your protection, they're for the protection of the most vulnerable among us. Morning, Misty. Thanks for popping in the chat there. Happy GM's Day. Hey, it's also a day to remember Gary Gygax. Not just because GaryCon is coming up, but even though GM's Day had been invented as a holiday, a gamer's holiday, many years before that, Gary passed away on the 4th of March in 2008. We miss him. He was a great guy. He brought a lot to the table. He would have loved that pun. And we honor him every year in March with GaryCon. Physical most years, virtual this year, virtual last year. Hopefully physical again next year, but we'll do that virtual GaryCon, or ethereal GaryCon as they like to call it, to honor him this year, because we love all that he gave us, and we love having been brought into a hobby that has so many ways to play. It's one of the best things you can do for your brain as you get older, is to play games, to constantly work on your reasoning abilities. It's a great thing to do when you're starting off in life and your brain's still adept at learning new concepts and new ideas. Gaming is just a great way to enhance your life, lower your stress levels, keep things interesting in between the other uninteresting things that life gives us. Not to get too morbid. So it's the last weekend of March, this GaryCon, which means it's the 25th, 26th, 27th, and 28th. and it's going to be very exciting. Why do I get the feeling that, yeah, 25th, 26th, 27th, 28th. You know, when it's physical GaryCon, a lot of us, particularly those of us who already live in the area, make a whole week out of it. We'll start gaming Monday or Tuesday, and we'll game right on through the following Monday. If we can talk some individuals who have the time and wherewithal to do it, to stay over an extra day or to come into town early and get some fresh gaming in, then that's what we like to do. It's always fun to play extra games with people that you don't see for most of the year, people that are maybe only around one time every year, just for GaryCon. So many friends have been made. You know, it was tipping up toward becoming a 3,000 person convention, and they may have to address that at some point in the not too distant future. It may just be that it levels off. It may just be that people that have been attending have some sort of legacy ability to continue to attend, and we will see. At some point, they're going to be pretty crowded. It would be nice maybe to extend it to a second venue. I mean, when when Gen Con outgrew the Horticultural Hall, they they did it that one year at the Grand Geneva when it was the Playboy Club, before it was the Americana, and now, of course, the Grand Geneva. They did it there, but they kept using the Horticultural Hall for some things too. So they didn't want to outgrow Lake Geneva. But of course, for Gen Con, that was inevitable, and the following year they moved on to University of Wisconsin at Parkside, and that was a much bigger. Happy GM's Day to you too, Rick. Thanks for stopping in the chat. It's um, it's true that GaryCon could move away from Lake Geneva, but I don't think it will. I don't think that's unlike Gen Con, which was going to continue to grow and become an international convention for all things gaming. The focus of GaryCon is such that it's meant to honor Gary and old school gaming. Maybe what they'll have to do is trim back some of the newer gaming. Limit limit how many slots are available for more modern games, so the focus can be on old school gaming. Although I'm not sure the logistics of how that could be done. I think uh, I think it was a great convention and still is, but it's starting to get to a point where it's popping at the seams. They need to expand the locations. I think they have a few options in Lake Geneva to do that. Of course, they could bring in the Horticultural Hall into the mix, which they kind of have, but it was more of a almost like its own little museum, right? They had some special games going on there, some VIP games, and they did some video production over there, and that's all good. But they really need another large venue, something like going back to the Ridge and adding that on too. It's on the other end of town. That's difficult. If you're in early March, You would have the potential for snow that's come at us a few years when we were in early March. And traveling back and forth is not that easy, so you'd have to be very upfront about where games were located. You might have a couple of us talked about there being a sort of a shadow con over at the Ridge that was OSR based, old school Renaissance, so newer games that mimic the sensibilities and mechanics and play style of early games, so that you could move that over. But that might be difficult for a number of vendors who put out some OSR games, in that they wouldn't be right near the vendor hall, so they could easily hop out, run a game, if someone else keep an eye on the booth, come back, hop out, someone else go out and play a game. If you had to drive 15 or 20 minutes to get to the other side of town, if there was any traffic on Main Street, it might screw up your schedule a little bit. And certainly, if you're a vendor, ideally your vendor tables are in the area of the most people, so you wouldn't want to have vendor. Well, you could have a satellite vendor table over there, I suppose. Maybe have vendor tables attached to demo tables, so they would get used and they wouldn't even have to leave your own booth per se. You'd be showing your game to the main OSR crowd. I don't know, just spitballing some ideas. But that's neither here nor there, because today, for GM's Day, we're going to look at some DMG tips. Looking at some tips for GMing. GMing tips for GM's Day. And going a little off the cuff here today. Let's pop this up there too. That'll do it. Where am I at? There we go. I'll lean a little bit to this side. Oh, it's the old Dungeon Master's Guide. What do we got in here? Forward. Now, I have looked over some of this in the past, and it has been a joy to go through many of the sections of the DMG. And just recently, we looked at approaches to playing Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, which in a way is the basis for GMing tips to begin with. And a lot of this stuff early on in the DMG is mostly player character creation advice. So it's advice for the GMs to assist in helping the players build player characters. And then we get into a lot of minutia like aging and disease and chance of parasitic infection on page 13. What are the odds of that? Eye color, disease, character abilities, and we look at a lot of stuff like that. I think some of the best GMing advice, though, falls under the area of looking at the campaign. So, let's pop that off there just for a second. I think what I want to do, oh, I see. I got to switch this. Make it bigified. Always interesting when we get the occasional question from the chat. If you have any questions about GMing, feel free to ask them. But we'll go to the conducting the game section in the DMG and kind of look through from there. We have checked out some of this in the past. Parts of it, rolling the dice and control of the game, handling troublesome players. If you don't have a first edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons DMG, it might be worth picking one up no matter what edition you run. There will be good advice in here. Integration of experienced or new players into the existing campaign. Multiple characters for a single player. Intervention by deities. The ongoing campaign. So there's an area that I'm pretty sure we did not spend time on in the past. So let's pop it open, make it a little bigger, and go over it. This will be useful. Well, it might seem highly unlikely. In fact, let's switch over to this view. Well, it might seem highly unlikely to those of you who have not been involved in fantasy adventure gaming for an extended period of time, after the flush of excitement wears off, perhaps a few months or a year, depending on the intensity of play, some participants will become bored and move to other gaming forums, returning to your campaign only occasionally. Shortly thereafter, even your most dedicated players will occasionally find that dungeon levels and wilderness castles will grow stale, regardless of subtle differences and unusual challenges. It is possible, however, for you to devise a campaign which will have a very minimal amount of participant attrition and enthusiast ennui, and it is not particularly difficult to do so. Hey, Gare, what you got up your sleeve? As has been mentioned already, the game must be neither too difficult to survive nor so easy as to offer little excitement or challenge. There must always be something desirable to gain, something important to lose, and the chance of having either happen. Furthermore, there must be some purpose to it all. There must be some backdrop against which adventures are carried out, and no matter how tenuous the strands, some web which connects the evil and the good, the opposing powers, the rival states and various peoples. This need not be evident at first, but as play continues, hints should be given to players, and their characters should become involved in the interaction and struggle between these vaster entities. Thus, characters begin as less than pawns, but as they progress in expertise, each eventually realizes that he or she is a meaningful, if lowly, piece in the cosmic game being conducted. When this occurs, players then have a dual purpose to their play, for not only will their player characters and henchmen gain levels of experience, but their actions will have meaning above and beyond that of personal aggrandizement. Stu. Say me, who is the DM? Yeah, sometimes you got to put your foot down, huh, Stu? It's true. It's true. But, and there's a GM tip there, Don't ever think that just saying you're the GM is the end all of the authority of it. Make sure that you've reasoned things out. Make sure you listen to your players. Just kidding. Please keep bringing snacks. Always nice when they bring snacks, especially for GM's Day. Gary continues in the 1E AD&D DMG. But if serious purpose is integral to a successfully ongoing campaign, there must be moments of relief as well. Such counterplots can be lesser and different themes within the whole. Whether some side dungeon or quest, a minor altercation between petty nobles, or whatever. Occasional pure fun scenarios can be conducted also. That is, moments of silliness and humor help to contrast with the grinding seriousness of a titanic struggle and relieve participants at the same time. After all, Advanced Dungeons & Dragons is first and foremost a game, a pastime for fun and enjoyment. At times, the fun aspect must be stressed. Thus, in my Greyhawk campaign, says Gary, I included an Alice in Wonderland level. And well, it is a deadly place. Those who have adventured through it have uniformly proclaimed it as great fun because it is the antithesis of the campaign as a whole. Similarly, there are places where adventurers can journey to a land of pure Greek mythology, into the future where the island of King Kong awaits their pleasure, or through the multiverse to different planets, including Jack Vance's Planet of Adventure, where they hunt sequins in the Karabas, well, Durdur and the Durdurmen hunt them. Of course, such areas represent a considerable investment in time and effort. Many of you will not have hours to spend creating these diversions, so it might seem that your campaign is doomed to eventual stagnation. Not so. The various prepared modules available commercially are ideal for use as sidelights to the whole of your game. In addition, there are many games which can be plugged into your AD&D campaign to serve as relief. After all is said and done, role-playing is role-playing, and the setting is not of paramount importance. The trick is to adopt one system to the other. The trick is to adapt one system to the other so as to enable continuity of the characters from AD&D into the other setting. This allows not only a refreshing change, but it poses new problems This allows not only a refreshing change, but it poses new problems to participants and adds new factors to your campaign, new abilities, new weapons, etc. TSR has many games and rule systems which can be used with this game to expand and invigorate your campaign. Space does not permit detailed explanations of how to do this with each and every possible system, but to readily lend themselves to both the spirit of AD&D and its systems, Boot Hill and Gamma World. So, Six Guns and Sorcery adapts Boot Hill and shows some ways of converting it. You also later on have Gamma World slipped in here as well. So it's several pages of conversion, and it's worth a look if you are someone who wants to try doing a conversion from one setting to another or one system to another. A lot of times they kind of conflated settings with systems. There weren't many systems that didn't suggest a setting as a norm. If it's a medieval fantasy rule set, I mean, if you've got 2 pages on swords, there's your tip off, right? If you've got a couple pages on modern armaments and ammo, your setting is probably a modern theater. Rick was quick to point out that I was Lake Geneva Games on time today. He's referring to starting 5 minutes late, getting the show going. As I mentioned at the top of the show, I did some computer updates yesterday, and it literally switched my E and D hard drives. One is named the other, and vice versa. And so all of the links for images that I have, like this wonderful background image from David Pancake and others, were just not there. They disappeared. Well, listen, we're about at that time, so we're going to pop back over to that GM's Day logo. March 4th, once a year, 3-4. It's a day and a command. Thank you, everybody, by the way, for popping in and joining us on the show today. I appreciate it. I want to thank everybody who winds up listening to the show on YouTube or watching it there. It is a really nice weather day. It's starting to kick in, and we're almost pushing 50 here in Lake Geneva, which will top early next week from what I'm told, so I'm looking forward to that. Is it fun to give weather reports? Anybody interested in what the weather is here in Lake Geneva? I'll bring up my 10-day forecast. It's only 31 right now, and it's not supposed to get above 33 today, but 42 tomorrow, 40 on Saturday, 42 on Sunday, 56 on Monday, 62 on Tuesday, 60, 49, 46, 41. So we're having a little over 60 day even, which is great. Well, the clock on the wall says it's time to go. It's been another fun The OK Grognard show, and I appreciate everybody coming in today. GMing tips for GM's Day. Nothing too specific, but we had some helpful advice on campaign running, and that's an always useful thing. Thursday, March 4th. March 4th for GM's Day. Once again, I will say thanks to everybody, and thanks to those who catch up with us on YouTube. If you do, please do me a favor and we're all over the place today, aren't we? What a classy show. Mondays and Thursdays at 10 a.m. Central. Again, if you're on YouTube watching videos, give us a thumbs up. If you're watching them on Twitch, be sure to follow the channel. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube if you're over there, and feel free to leave comments. It's always helpful to get some constructive criticism, like push the right buttons and make sure your images are loaded up before the show starts. You know, little things like that might be useful for someone who was trying to appear as at least a pseudo-professional. All right, everybody. Have a great GM's Day. Try to get some gaming in. If you got family and friends that are in your pod, so to speak, do some of that. And if you don't, get online, play a game or two. And have a great, great GM's Day. From beautiful Lake Geneva, this is the OK Grognard Show. Bye-bye.